Common Knowledge is brought to you by PureMTGO.com and InkedGaming.com. Use coupon code CCMTG10 at checkout for a 10% discount on all Inked Gaming supplies and accessories. You can support the show directly through Patreon at patreon.com/common knowledge.
This is the Common Knowledge Podcast. It's not about the cost, it's about the knowledge. Here are your hosts, Brandon Clark and Lobbert.
We're sitting at our desks. You all know what that means. It's time for another episode of Common Knowledge. This week on Common Knowledge, I'm your host, Brandon. And this is my co-host, Lobbert. And we're going to be talking about mulliganing. And mulliganing is our topic. But first, what are we playing? I actually haven't listened to a Drive to Work podcast in a really long time, so I don't even know if that's how they actually are started anymore, but I assume they are.
I don't know. That was fun regardless.
Have you ever listened to the Drive to Work podcast?
No. I listened to a lot of the morning stream, but I've heard about it. You've told me about it.
It's Mark Rosewater's podcast.
Yeah.
And that's how at least that's how he started it like 3 years ago when I listened to an episode. Anyway.
So that might be a joke that no one gets. It probably is. I'm doing good. If I can talk. Yeah, I'm doing pretty good.
How unlistenable can we make this opening? All right, I'm sorry. I'm done. I'm going to mute myself while you talk, and I'm going to drink some water.
I'm doing pretty good. I don't know. Not much to say. I guess news update for nobody's going to care, but maybe Brandon. Got my girlfriend moved into my house apartment. It's not an apartment. It's like a duplex, but we got her moved in. So it's been pretty cool. Like we're both nervous and it's working out great. So that's my life. How are you this week?
I'm good. I started a new job, so I don't have to have my stinky knife selling job, which was kind of just a joke, but I took it because they called me back. Honestly, I didn't even know what the job was until like halfway through the interview. Because they didn't really, they just said, hey, we're looking for marketing representatives for our marketing company. You can make up to X amount of dollars a week part-time. And I was just like, sure, whatever. I'm sending in resumes to everything I can find right now. So sure, send it in. And they called me and I had an interview the next day. And it was like halfway through the interview when I was like, is this a pyramid scheme? What am I doing?
Yeah, that reminds me of like, I had no job. I really needed money. Like, I applied to everything I could find on the internet and somebody called me back and I went and interviewed and they're like, oh, you're great. And it sounded more like they were selling the job than trying to vet me, which was the first red flag. And they're like, hey, can you start working today? We can use you today. And I was just like, you gonna pay me? Yeah. Okay, let's do it. And so like they walk out and they're like, well, we'll teach you how to do it on the way there. And I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing.
Where are we going?
Get in the van. And I was like,
sounds like the beginning of a horror movie.
I'm like a foot taller than all of you, so I'll get in the van. Like,
doesn't matter. They're gonna put you in a dark, closed space where your height doesn't mean a thing. They're gonna swarm you.
Anyway, they drop us off in the middle of a neighborhood. Still, I didn't know what I was doing, and he's like, "I'll show you." And he walks up to a door, starts knocking on it, and they were selling like internet to people. And like 4 houses in, I like watched this guy like scam this really like helpless old lady who was like, I don't know if I should be doing this. I need to call my daughter. And like she kept on like forgetting what we were talking about. And he's just like, sign here. And I'm like, I am getting out of here. and I got out of there. Like, that's what it reminds me of.
Okay, mine definitely was not that sketchy. Like it was nice because they still paid me. Like it wasn't all commission. So like I still could get sort of paid. But like I don't know, they claimed that we didn't do any cold calling, but basically we just cold called to get people. Like I would go to people and I would do a demo and then they would give me referrals. And then I would say, okay, make sure you text these people so that it's okay that I call them. Nah, it's fine. Just call them. I don't care. It's my sister. Just call them. Okay. And then I'm still just cold calling people. Anyway. But yeah.
That was Where Are We Working? So do you want to transition into What Are We Playing?
That's not, or did you say Where Were We Working?
Yeah, I guess where were we working? Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we were working. It's not anymore. But in current news, what we are playing, Sean, why don't you start?
What are we playing?
This is another kind of funny thing. So my boss walks up to me and he's like I've been telling him about Pauper, and he used to like work at a game store. And
I was about to do that. That's not Pauper, and then you said the word Pauper, and I was like, dang it.
No, yeah,
listen to the story.
My boss was like, hey, like I finally built a Pauper deck. Like we should play. And this was like
Nice.
a couple of weeks ago. So we played, and I tried to go easy, but I just, couldn't lose to someone who just barely started playing. And like I was holding spells back in my hand, and it still wasn't even like a fight. And he's like, hey, you should give me some tips. Like, here's my deck list. Figure it out. So it was the soldiers list. It was green, white soldiers. And there is like a 2/1 soldier with infect. And yeah, so he like, it was a soldier tribal deck with one creature that had infect, and he had like giant growths and rancors in it. And I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting, like using a tribal deck to play infect. I wonder if this could work. So I actually like built it. And after about 4 games of losing, I was like, how can I improve this? So now the deck doesn't have any infect in it or green.
That was probably step 1. That was probably step
2. But like it had some ideas in it that I never would have gone towards if I had built the deck myself. So that was really interesting to be like infantry veteran. You can tap it to give an attacking creature +1/+1. It's like a 1/1 for 1. And it's surprising how awkward that makes combat for your opponent. And then it has like a whole bunch of exalted creatures and stuff. So like the attack does some weird stuff, and you can have a really high threat count. If you can find my like tapped out profile, there's a deck list on there, but it's pretty interesting, and maybe one day I'll do a video on it. Anyway,
that's cool. That's a cool story.
Yeah,
I think that's important.
I'm
not going to tell you because I'm going to talk more about what you were talking about. But anyway, I think that's just an important like lesson in life in general. Just because you're better at something than someone doesn't mean you can't learn something from them. And I think that's something that, is important as a Magic player. Like, I don't know. I think about like Reed Duke, right? Like when you're watching his videos, his opponent, like, I'm going to use the bees deck. Did you see that?
No.
It's been like a meme in the Magic community the last week. But anyway, Reed played a modern league with like a Sultai deck that he made because he's not going to do anything than cast Tarmogoyf, right? So, and he gets paired against this deck, and he's kind of thinking like, okay, what could this be? And then they cast like Hornet Nest, which is like a 0/2 that when it receives damage, it creates that many 1/1 bees.
Yeah.
It had like this 4-mana Hellion where you pay X life or something when it comes into play, and it deals X damage to you and a creature you control. So it's like a total garbage card. It also had like Blasphemous Act and stuff, but basically like it just came, like Hornet's Nest came down, or first Blood Moon came down. Like that was the first one. Blood Moon came down, and Reed's like, oh, well, that changes everything. I'm kind of in trouble here. And then the Hornet Nest comes down, and Reed Duke's just like, I really don't know what's happening. And then the Helion comes down, and Reed reads it, Okay, well, my opponent has 13 Bs. Okay. But then, like, after the fact, Reed was just like, that was really interesting deck. And, like, or he called it, like, a sweet deck. And he's like, that was pretty good play from my opponent and, like, a really sweet deck. And, yeah, it was just one of those things where, like, I would just be pissed off, right? If it was me, I would just be upset that my opponent had the audacity to play something so ridiculous and beat me with it, But, like, Reed Duke's one of the best players in the world. Like, obviously he's a better Magic player than the kid that built this weird Hornet deck, right? But, like, he still just took it as, like, wow, that was really interesting, and this is, everything I got out of that matchup. And he, like, he still approaches it from the sense of, like, what can I learn from this? How does this experience help me be a better Magic player in the future? And so that's what I got out of your story.
Yeah, I didn't think I was gonna, like, learn anything, but, like, I feel like I really did. I didn't expect to. I haven't gone back to him with my results of, like, hey, I took out your heart and also everything that made the deck what it is, and this is what it is now.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I think you can still come with, like, yeah, I think that, like, this core of your deck was really, really smart, and this was really strong, and this is how I built on it,
Yeah.
It's probably one way to approach it, but anyway, maybe I think this is just a really good lesson. I don't know. If you guys get anything out of today's episode, is that you can learn from literally anybody. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't even care if you turn the podcast off now and go home. This is actually something that is really important to me, and that I do try to practice, is that you can learn something from everybody. And I'm not always very good at it because I'm super arrogant. But for the listeners out there who are probably better persons than I, if you can take this away from the episode and use that, it's going to make you a better person. It's going to make the people around you better people.
Which is, anyway. It's kind of funny to say because, like, I feel like our Magic relationship has always been you getting frustrated at me because I'm playing something not meta and just like, why do I keep losing? And I'm just like, I don't know, man, stop losing.
Yeah, it super is. I mean, except for the difference here is that I respect you as a player, so I know that you're probably just beating me, Not like, oh, this is ridiculous, I got so unlucky. It's I mean, even though in the videos I usually do chalk it up to luck because, again, I'm very arrogant, but when I'm not putting on a show for the patrons, I do go sit in my room and think about the matches and think about the decks and what I maybe could have done differently. But
that's funny.
Anyway, no. So for what I'm playing, Sean had Blue Black Delver written in the show notes, but I erased that and put in what I actually played this week because I was sick of having mediocre results and going 1-2 or 2-1. I wanted to 3-0 one of these pauper things on Tuesday night at Oasis Games. So I just was like, I'm going to stop trying to interact with my opponents. And I'm going to stop trying to beat all these stupid linear decks. And I'm just going to play a better linear deck.
Elves.
And I played Elves. And I dodged bad matchups. There's some Burn in the room. There's some Crypt Rat stacks in the room. I dodged the Boros Monarch player, which I didn't really want to play against. And I beat Mono Blue Delver. And I beat... I don't even remember. That's just how inconsequential my matches were. I don't even remember what I played against. I just remembered that I sat down and they played their first spell and I was like, great, they can't interact with me. Blah, 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 blah. L. I got it. Yeah, it was nice. I don't know. It makes me sad to think about, but my biggest issue with Modern is that it just feels like it's just uninteractive matchups. Like, just every single match I sit down to is just, I'm not going to interact with you. You're not going to interact with me, with the exception of like some weird sideboard cards. And we're basically just going to flip a coin, see who dies first.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like Pauper is moving in that direction. There's a lot of linear, just non-interactive, weird decks. Pauper's definitely nowhere close to as bad as I think Modern is in this regard, but I can kind of feel it moving that way, and it scares me.
The fact of the matter is that removal is always going to be... I feel like removal is really, really good in our format. Counterspell, just blue counterspell, is really, really good in our format. And so I think as long as that's true, and I don't ever see that not being true, then it's going to be kind of safe. That's
true. And the uninteractive decks in this format, they're all creature-based decks, right? There's nothing weird. There's no... I don't know. There's no Goryo's Vengeance, make a Grizzlebrand on turn 1, draw my whole deck. Rawr. There's no weird shenanigans like that. It's all creature stuff. So
even if you're like comboing, it's like Ghostly Flicker, or you found 2 weird toughness dudes that do something stupid.
Yeah, I think again that's one of the reasons I like blue black a lot too. The removal suite available in the blue black Delver deck kind of helps it with those non-linear matchups. It gives it a lot more tools and resources for people who are just trying to do silly things like pants up a Boggle or Anyway.
Well, that doesn't sound good for the blue black Delver deck that you're having mixed results and felt like you needed to get away from it.
Yeah, I think I'm having better results with it than I was Scred, but it's still just, it would just, every week I would sit down and I would play really, really close matches against Burn or against Elves or against some other, or against Boggles, And it would just always come down to like, okay, I need to draw my right pieces for the right matchups. And if I don't, then I just lose. Yeah. So I just was like, I'm just not going to care about what my opponents are doing. I'm just going to play Elves and hope I dodge my bad matchups. And I did. So it was nice to 3-0 for once at the thing. Got some store credits.
I want to say that I want to show up, but the fact of the matter is it's probably not going to happen.
You need to show up 4 times so that you can get into the Invitational.
Oh, I'm hoping for 1.
Well, that's not going to get you into the Invitational.
Nope.
Gotta show up 4 times.
Well, that's got to start with 1.
Okay.
Ready for card of the week?
Can't be this week.
No?
No, because I'm actually not going to be there this week.
Okay.
Anyway. Yeah, card of the weeks.
Card of the week.
Cards of the weeks.
I chose this one. It's Hydroblast and Pyroblast.
Hey, these are uncommons.
Sean, they weren't always.
Sean put the Masters artwork in the show notes.
Yeah, because they're the first ones that came up on Scryfall, and I'm a hard worker, so I didn't do anything else besides copy and paste them. Boom. So, if you don't know what Hydroblast and Pyroblast are, Google it, I guess. No. Hydroblast is an instant for 1 blue, or a single blue. It says, choose 1, counter target spell if it's red, or destroy target permanent if it's red. Pyroblast says the same thing, but for blue spells and permanents. Yes. These are sideboard cards.
Fire can be savage, but it is fickle. Water is always true. It flows steady and world-shaping.
Water can be crushing, but it is predictable. Fire is always dynamic. Its rage absolute and all-consuming. So, I'm going to make a statement, and it's not even controversial. Pyroblast is the better one.
Oh, yeah, okay. I mean, unless you're... Yeah, no, it's always just better.
Yeah.
Because blue is the best color, right? Like, blue is just better than red. But the red one kills the blue one. So the blue one is worse than the red one. But blue is better than red. So the blue one can actually kill the red one.
I'm confused.
Good. Mission accomplished.
Let's talk about these cards for a second. So I want to start with Hydroblast.
Okay.
The first thing I want to say is that it confuses me when people put this in their sideboard sometimes. If I see like a blue-white deck and they're running a Hydroblast, I don't really like that. White has access to enough like good life gain spells, and in my mind, Hydroblast is really fighting burn. Like, it's a really efficient spell that can get Curse of the Pierced Heart off of the field as well as stuff off of the stack.
Yeah.
But White is so good at gaining life and destroying enchantments. I mean, maybe you don't even care about removing enchantments.
Yeah.
But you run that in your sideboard anyway if you're running blue-white.
I feel like if I'm blue-white, I think like I definitely, instead of Hydroblast, would prefer Dispels.
Mm-hmm.
They serve very similar functions in the burn matchup, Hydroblast and Dispel. Obviously, Dispel can't deal with permanents on the board, but it counters most of the burn spells in their deck, and then you can have a few life gain spells in your deck, and then you've just got more versatility in your sideboard.
That's how I feel. Like, I don't think Hydroblast is very good, but it's not always the go-to. Like, if you're like blue-red, yeah, Hydroblast is good because you don't have access to those life gain spells. But I don't know. These are kind of tricky because I've seen people board in Pyroblasts just because their opponent might have a Hydroblast or the vice versa. Like, if you're playing Tron, I've seen people board in Hydroblasts because their opponent might have Pyroblast. Like, they're...
And that's another scenario where I'm just like, wouldn't you just rather have a Dispel? Like, if they're a deck that plays Pyroblast, you probably just are fine with Dispel.
Yeah.
It seems super narrow to me.
Yeah, I feel like that's... Like, yeah, you really have to evaluate when you're putting these into your main deck. Like, when you're putting these into your sideboard and putting them in for a matchup, like, they become very narrow. And yeah, it's a 1-mana spell, so you can kind of feel good about it sometimes, but they rot in your hand like a percentage of the time. So they're not like just auto put in if your opponent has that color. Like, for example, when I was running that burn deck, I played 0 copies of Pyroblast in it. And the logic is that whatever you use with your Pyroblast, like if you used to counter a blue spell to save another burn spell, you would just rather have another burn spell. Because
yeah, it's basically the same thing. Like,
yeah,
you're still spending 2 cards to get in that X points of damage.
There's always going to be hands, though, where you're like, okay, I need to top deck a burn spell, Pyroblast. Oh, this doesn't do anything. Like, and it only does stuff if your opponent's interacting, and so you're not being aggressive enough. So I've actually really liked taking Pyroblast out of mono red sideboard.
I can agree with that. The places where I do like Hydroblast are obviously places where I feel weak enough to burn that I'm okay dedicating sideboard slots to a card that is probably only coming in against burn.
Yeah.
I very rarely have boarded it in against Pyroblast decks where I'm just like, oh, I need to be able to fight over their Pyroblasts. I usually will just have a Dispel or 2 in my sideboard. Like Mono Blue Delver, for instance. Like, I would probably do like 3 Hydroblasts, 2 Dispels. And I would just bring Dispels in.
Well, honestly, the Mono Blue Delver's sideboard is... Like, they don't have that many options. It's kind of a bad sideboard, if you ask me.
It might be. I don't really know it very well. I was just making up a deck where I could...
Yeah. No, but it's, like, valid.
Where I could see this option.
Yeah, that's why I think you do see it. It's one of the best cards in the Mono Blue sideboard, because it does what, like... It fights against the burn deck really well for that deck, but when you mix blue with white or green, I feel like there's better options. If you're mixed with red or black, then I love Hydroblast, but those other 2 colors, white and green, I don't see the need for Hydroblast.
Yeah. The other sideboard where I think Hydroblast is really good is what is that? Oh gosh, Tireless Tribe.
Yeah.
Because I think that like Hydroblast needs to have a very specific purpose when you're bringing it in. something as narrow as Hydroblast, right? You just need to know exactly what your game plan with that card is. It's not just like, oh, they had red cards in their deck, I'm going to bring in my Hydroblast. It's specifically like, I'm using this for a specific purpose, and this purpose is to protect my Tireless Tribe. And if it happens to fight over a Pyroblast, then great. That's just gravy. That's upside. But it's not there for that. It's not there to, in my, like, even if I was playing like Mono Blue Delver versus like Scred Delver, I don't know if I would bring in Hydroblasts.
I really don't like Hydroblast against Scred Delver.
I think I would just bring in Dispel. If I had access to Dispel or two, I would just bring those in. I don't think I would bring in Hydroblasts.
Yeah, because they fight over Counterspell. And that's like a more impactful thing than their burn spells.
I want to be able to fight over Counterspells or Spellslinger Sprites or something. I don't want to have to like Hydroblast a Lightning Bolt. I just don't feel like that's a fight that you want to be picking in that deck. Like your sideboard plan against Scred Delver should be geared against that anyway by bringing in Stormbound Geists, and if you have extra copies of the 2/4 with affinity for islands or something
Spire
like that.
Golem, yeah.
Spire Golems, like if you have those in your sideboard, you probably already have those in your main deck. But like you're already just tuning your deck to be just naturally good against Lightning Bolts and Screds anyway. That like I just don't want to bring in a card that's so narrow in a matchup where card advantage is really important.
Yeah, against affinity, where their combo pieces are red.
That is a good example of I specifically am bringing in everything I can to counter ATOG and Fling and Teamer Battle Rage. I can try to deal with everything else. I just specifically need to not lose to this.
Yeah.
Like that's a really good example of when Hydroblast will be very powerful.
And we're totally focusing on Hydroblast because it's probably the trickier one.
Is just really good.
Yeah, Pyroblast is just good and a no-brainer of like, wow, they're running blue. Zoop.
Yeah. They have Counterspell in their deck. Cool. They have Spellsetter Sprite in their deck. Cool. They have blue cards in their deck. I'm bringing in my Pyroblasts. Cool.
Like, it doesn't feel bad. They're just like, Augur Bolas, and you're like, nah.
Pyroblast, yeah. Yeah, Pyroblast is a lot less narrow.
But, like, in both of these cases, you are detracting from your plan, so I think these are more like if you need to interact or you want to interact. Like, I don't know. What am I thinking of? I guess Burn is the big one of like, no, you don't want Pyroblast. You just want to do a linear thing. You don't care about interacting. Like, I don't think Red Deck Wins necessarily wants to bring in all of its Pyroblasts or just have 4 Pyroblasts against red or blue decks, because they're going to get grinded out eventually. They still want to be very, very fast, and if they hit too many of them, then that's a problem.
I can agree on all those accounts.
But they're worth the money, guys. I remember when I first started making Pauper videos and I didn't have these, and like one of my posts on Reddit was like, hey, check out my video. Watch me try to play Pauper without Hydroblast and Pyroblast. And everyone was just like, yeah, that's tough, bro. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I remember playing a game with the Common Knowledge YouTube account, which, when Spencer gave me access to, already was loaded up with all these goodies. Mm-hmm. And I remember playing a game with Pyroblast, and my opponent got incredibly upset at me.
Oh yeah,
because I had Pyroblasts. It was his comments were like, "Oh, look at Mr. Moneybags over here with his Pyroblasts. You're so great. You're so much better than me." And I was just like, "I'm sorry."
That was secretly me on my other account.
Well, that would explain it, because I'm pretty sure I lost that game. Oh man. Anyway, so that was the card of the week segment, or in this case, cards of the week.
Main topic.
So let's jump into our main topic, and this is going to be a little bit shorter of a main topic. 15 or so minutes. We've been kind of overloading you guys, we feel like, with information. And so this is going to be kind of a lighter week.
I mean, it's a big topic, but like it's big as in important.
Yeah.
But I don't want to waste your time because I don't think that there's that much to talk about because most of this is like deck specific.
And it's all super subjective too.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And so I think we want to try to just cover just sort of the basics, like general rules of thumb, but nothing in here is doctrine, so don't take it as such. This is something that you should be applying to your own deck building, because that's another thing that will influence these decisions, or your own deck building and the ways you play your games. And so the way I would mulligan will be probably a lot different than the way Sean mulligans, because we play very differently and we play different decks and all that stuff. So, but yeah, we kind of just want to lay a foundation for newer players. And again, this is going to be a good recap for more enfranchised players. And then you build on it yourself, right?
Just like common mistakes is a big thing we're going to go over.
Yeah. So, do you want to just kind of start us out then? And I guess we said it at the beginning of the show, but if you weren't listening, our main topic this week is mulliganing.
Yeah. So I feel like the first thing I want to talk about is the speed of the format. Like, when do you need action by in Pauper to keep up? Do you have an impression of this?
I think like turn 3, 2.5.
I think 2.5 is perfect because you really want at turn 2. You can catch up if you play turn 3, but hands that don't do anything until turn 3 are typically full of bigger spells and you can't double up on spells. So that's really awkward.
I feel like the critical turns in this format are, turn 2.5, having either something that you can play that's powerful on turn 3, or having like a good piece of interaction for their turn 3 play. And then turn 4, being able to double spell, whether that's like 3-drop, 1-drop, or 2-drop, 2-drop, or 2-drop, 1-drop, tap land. That feels like a really powerful 4th turn. So I think those are some of the critical turns in the format. IMO.
Yeah. And the reason we say turn 2.5 is because like the speed of the deck you're playing against varies. You have to always be cognizant of decks like Red Deck Wins or Delver being the big one. You can't get behind that deck because then they've already won. Yeah. Like if they've got a Delver in play or just a fairy or 2, and then you're trying to catch back up, like you're just punching yourself in the face because they're just like spell stutter sprite.
Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. Stop
hitting yourself. Like, oh great, you just let me play my 1/1. Great, thank you. I'm gonna put it back in my hand. Like, I feel like turn 3 often is too late, but it's possible to catch up. I mean, okay, we're gonna say this at some point, so let's get it out of the way early. Better players mulligan more, right?
Like to an extent, because I mulligan a lot.
Well,
so I think that yes, better players do mulligan more than the average player, but they also mulligan less than the average player, if that makes sense, because they're mulliganing the right amount.
Yeah, like they won't keep the bad hands.
On the one side that are just like, look at a hand and it's like, well, I have a 2-drop and I have a 3-drop and I have my most powerful spell in my deck in my opening hand, but I have 1 land. Well, I don't want to mulligan because that would be bad, so I'll keep this. And then on the inverse, you have players like me who like look at hands and are just like, this is a perfectly playable 6, but if my opponent has the nut draw, I probably won't win. 5. There's no land in this 5. You know?
Yeah. It's hard to make a hard and fast rule, yeah. But
Yeah.
that hand you were talking about, like having mana issues like that where you have too few land, I feel like that is one of the worst things that can happen to you. Of like, like keeping a one lander and hoping to draw that next land is usually worse. Like one landers are seldom keepable, even on the draw. If you have 7 cards in your hand and you're on the draw, one of your cards is already a mana.
Yeah.
Like
So
you are like 35% to draw a land the first time, and then by the second time, like if you're adding the first and second draw together, you've got like a 50% chance of hitting your land on turn 2. That's not good.
I'm gonna praise Reed Duke some more. But one thing I've heard him do is like he'll look at a hand, and when he's debating if he's gonna mulligan the hand or not, he goes, would I mulligan this hand at 6? Like if it was like, you know, if you're looking at like 4 lands and 3 spells, and he goes like, take away one of the lands in this deck, would I mulligan this hand at 6? No. Well, I should probably keep it on 7. And like the inverse is he'll look at it and he'll be like, would I mulligan this hand, you know, like would I mulligan this hand at 6? And it's like a 1-lander, you know, with no plays, and it's like, yeah, I definitely would, so I'll mulligan it to 6 and hope for something different, you know, because there's always that chance that you just like get the same hand.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. Anyway, that's just something that I've seen a lot of pro players think about when they look at it, and it's just like, yeah, when you're on the fence about it, think about, would I keep this hand if it was on 6? And if your answer is yes, then you should probably just keep it on 7. Like, yeah, you can probably find something maybe better, but you could also just mana screw yourself, find something worse, and have to mulligan to 5. So,
yeah, like, I don't know. It's so deck dependent that it's hard to talk about. Of like, if you are a proactive deck and you're not doing something until turn 3, that's miles worse than if you're a reactive deck doing something on turn 3.
Yeah.
Because like a stompy hand where you play like you mulligan to 5 and then you just go like land 1-drop, land 2-drop, 2, well, land 1-drop, 1-drop. I have no cards in my hand. You win. You can win that game. Like that's super winnable.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've heard people like, oh, I never mulligan to 3. I'm like, no, I've mulliganed to 3 quite a bit. Like if my four cards don't have a single land in it, I will take like land, spell over that, or spell, land, or just 3 land.
I'm gonna tell a story though about a time I mulliganed to 3.
Okay.
I mean, it was so this might be a little different than any scenario you've thought of, because I do a lot of time play linear decks, especially when I'm playing competitively, like Modern or something like that. And this was like 3 or 4 years ago when I actually enjoyed playing Modern. But I was playing in a PTQ, PPPPTQ, and I was playing Storm, and my opponent was on Jund, and Jund was just a notoriously bad matchup for Storm, and I ended up like mulliganing to 3, mostly because like my 7 and my 6 were really bad against Jund, and I was looking for something very specific that I could hit on 5, and then my 5 and my 4 had no lands in them.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I probably should have just kept my 4 and hoped, but I mulliganed to 3, and then I ended up winning that game on the back of I just drew really well and had a really quick empty the Warrens kill. But I mean, like, I think that like had I found a good 5, because even on like a good 5, Modern Storm can do really, really well. Like if I draw the right sideboard cards against Jund. But like even though I could have kept my 7 and I could have kept my 6, they were like draws that would not win against like the very common like Jund sideboarded draws. Like they were hands that would just lose to Graveyard Hate. Like if he just played like a Relic of Progenitus, like I just couldn't win. So that's just like a weird example of one. But like I think that saying you never will mulligan to somewhere is just wrong.
Yeah. I like that's never
yeah,
don't mulligan to 0, keep the 1 card in your hand. I'll say that.
Yeah. That was sort of the point of my story, was I mulliganed to 3 and I won a game. right? Even though I
Yeah.
wasn't like actively deciding to mulligan to 3. Like I actively decided to mulligan to 5, and then variance told me no, you're going to 3.
Yeah.
But I think that like players are super afraid of mulliganing a lot, and I think that, like you said, the good players mulligan more than the average player, right?
Yeah. But I've also seen, like, that doesn't mean just like when in doubt always mulligan, because I've seen people like, oh, I think this leads into another one of the topics I wanted to bring up. I've never been a fan of when people are like, oh, this is just a matchup where you mulligan until you hit relic, or like that's not pauper. You mulligan until you hit Stony Silence against Affinity. You just keep mulliganing, and because that's an auto win. Like, no, if your deck is designed to do something proactive. Every deck, like almost every deck, does something proactive. If you get one of those proactive draws, like, just do that. Like,
yeah, because I mean, it does have diminishing returns. Because in my Storm example, had my 5 had 1 land in it, I would have snap kept it no matter what. Like, I just wouldn't risk going lower than that to try to find my off good draw against Jund. But like mulliganing a 7 and then mulliganing a 6, I feel a lot less bad about. Especially like, and I'll use the case of like if I'm playing against an Affinity deck, where if I draw Stony Silence, I'm 90% to win the game. I don't know, just throwing a number out there. Like,
yeah,
Stony Silence will just increase any deck's win percentage against Affinity by just a stupid amount, right? So if my 7 doesn't have Stony Silence in it, and like I don't feel like the rest of my deck's game plan can do anything against Affinity, and my 6 doesn't, then I will definitely mulligan to 5. But I'll probably still just keep whatever 5 I get, and just, there's a reason why I don't like Modern to begin with. But we're like using the super extreme example because I don't believe that there are that many matchups in Pauper where the sideboard cards are so important that you feel like I need to mulligan a 7 that doesn't have a sideboard card in it. Like, even playing, like Elves versus Burn, or Scred Delver versus Burn. Those are 2 matchups where I think that Burn is just notoriously favored.
Yeah.
I would not mulligan a serviceable 7 out of either of those hands to try to hit a sideboard card on a 6.
Yeah, like I think very much Pauper is not a format where the sideboard cards matter that much. Like, okay, maybe the one card that I can think of is like, you're playing against Boggles, you want your standard bearer.
Mm-hmm.
But
I mean, there are a few. It's not as bad as other formats. It's,
yeah, but even then, like, I never just aggressively mulligan for it. Like, I hate when people like aggressively mulligan. It's like, if you get a decent hand that doesn't have these, like, come on, your deck's supposed to do something.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important again to say that we're talking about specifically Pauper right now in this context. I know that we've been talking about other stuff to use examples to draw from, but because I'm not saying, I don't think Sean is saying, and I'm definitely not saying don't aggressively mulligan, because there are formats where I will aggressively mulligan. I definitely, if I look at a good 7 where it's like, I could keep this 7, but I don't think I win this matchup with this hand, I will mulligan that hand and try to get something better on 6 with more sideboard cards or whatever. I don't believe that this is a format where you want to aggressively mulligan, because all the decks do something powerful. All the decks have, I guess, a lot of play with each other. There are ways to interact in most main decks with other things. And they're just, this is a format where we typically have a lot of cantrips.
Yeah.
And so it makes mulligan decisions a lot easier, because you can keep more 1-land hands. You can keep more hands that are light on something else, because you can try to use your cantrips to filter through your library and find those things. I do think that the more linear your deck is, the less this rule applies. I think that the more linear your deck is, the more aggressively you will be mulliganing. But I don't know.
Yeah.
And that also could just be subjective to the deck. I've had like elf draws where it's like 3 lands, a Korean Ranger, a 2-drop, a 2-drop, a 3-drop. And those 2-drops aren't Priest of Titania, and I just feel like this isn't explosive enough for this matchup.
Because like you're planning out your first 3 turns, which planning out your first 3 turns is really the big thing of like, what does this do? What does this beat? Can I do anything? Like, am I just playing, some derpy guy and then another derpy guy? Then turn 3, it's like, yeah, you have action, but what are you affecting on the board? Like that's super important. I don't know. I don't know if it plays into this, but like, I don't like keeping hands that are like, if it just has this, then like I got bit really, like I posted this on the Facebook group. Remember the hand where it was like, it was a no lander burn hand. All of it. Yeah, it had like double lava runner, a bunch of like, everything was a 1-drop, but it had, I think like I had 2 Gitaxian probes, and I was on the draw.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I think I would have kept that hand if it was me, honestly.
I ended up keeping it and just got like Josh Hubbard did the math on it, and he's like, it was like exactly 50% that you're gonna hit a land within a reasonable amount of time. I think it was like on your first turn, you have a 50% chance to hit a land.
First turn. I mean, that sounds like just a nut from burn, right?
It would have been. I got bit real bad by it. So like,
I would flip the coin for that every time. I mean, would you keep that as a 6 if it was like 1 less burn spell, but it was still 2 Gitaxian probes, like lava runner,
lightning bolt. I mean, I did keep it. I stand by, like, it feels like the mountains in that deck are magnetic, and you're gonna get a mountain. Like, they just hit, they come into your hand. That just happens. Like, I don't know how many. Maybe it's just because I'm cognizant of it. Of just like, wow, I'm getting so many land. But
yeah,
I would have kept that again. I stand by that. Like, if you do the math, and you're like, there's a 50% chance that I hit 1 land and I can do things off of 1 land. I like that.
Yeah, I would flip that coin. I think that I would have kept that hand. Because again, that's a hand that I would have looked at it and gone, would I mulligan this at 6?
Yeah.
And it's like at 6, I don't think I would. Because in a deck, especially like burn, the more you mulligan, like mulligans just have such diminishing returns for burn that you want to try to get every 6 or 7 that you possibly can.
And so burn can catch up.
I wouldn't have even considered mulliganing that at 6. So I'm going to keep my free card, thank you, and just keep that 7. But I don't know. And you got punished for it, which it was 50-50.
Yeah.
You know? So
I got the bad half.
And that's just that I think that's an important mulliganing rule as well. Is that sometimes you're going to make the right mulligan decision and you're going to get burned for it because variance is a very real part of this game. And sometimes you're going to make bad mulliganing decisions and you're going to get rewarded for it. And you're going to feel smart and good. But in hindsight, you actually should have kept your 7.
Yeah, that's the really hard part about mulliganing. Like, keeping your own biases in check.
This game, period.
Yeah.
That's why it drives me nuts when people look.
I always do.
And I think it's okay that you always look, because I think that you're in the right mindset of, I'm going to mulligan this. I'm going to look and see how it would have turned out for me. Oh, I would have gotten, well, this was still a bad hand. But it just, when a new player, like at FNM, it's his, he's been playing for 2 or 3 months or something. He's starting to get the ropes down. And then they say, I'm going to mulligan this hand. Oh, I would have gotten there. I should have kept. No, You shouldn't have. You shouldn't have. It's fun to kind of look and go, oh, what would have happened? You know?
Yeah. Laugh
Especially
about
when
it.
you look and it's just air and you go, yeah, I made the right decisions, and you validate yourself a little bit, but I don't know. That's why I just don't look, because I know that I would get very results oriented with it. I would look and just get pissed off. Like, of course the land's there. And universe.
Yeah. Have you ever been sitting across
getting punished for it? Ugh. That would be my attitude. And so that's why I just don't look.
have you ever been sitting across the table from someone who does the thing where they, okay, I'm gonna draw 5 cards, and I'm like, they've already mulliganed twice, and then they look at it, they look over at their deck, and they just start like putting a bunch of cards in their hand, like they're looking and they're putting the cards in their hand. Like, I'm just like, whoa, what's happening here, you cheater McCheater face? And then they like shuffle, and you're like,
they're just mulliganing again. That's common enough that it just like doesn't faze me.
Oh, it's still like, I don't know. I watch my opponent like a hawk when I'm playing Paper Magic, of like, wait, where did that card come from? And they're like this, and I'm like, yeah, all right.
I definitely count cards while we're playing. Like,
I'm telling Vegas.
Don't tell. I don't want to get beat up.
Pit boss coming at you.
You want to count cards? You do it in Atlantic City.
Is that from something?
Yeah, the Blackjack movie about counting cards with Kevin Spacey in it. You tell my old friend Kevin Spacey that if he counts cards in this town again, I'll stab him in the face with a soldering iron. He can go do it in Atlantic City. You've really never seen that movie?
Yeah, no.
It's not that good of a movie, so you're not really missing out, but I think it's fun. I enjoy it. Anyway, I was going to make a point before you distracted me with counting cards. What were we even talking about? How did we get on the topic of Atlantic City and counting cards in Atlantic City?
Cats. I don't know.
Yeah, so the amount of cats that you have where we're going. Oh man.
I don't know. I'll just bring up something.
Cat, you do it in Atlantic City.
I'll just bring up something that's something I haven't written down.
Okay. I think I remember what I was saying. Because you were like, I watch my opponents like a hawk, and I was like, yeah, I count cards. I count the cards. But that's just because I want to keep a mental note of how many cards my opponent has in hand.
Yeah.
So I just am naturally just like counting their cards. Every once in a while it throws me off because I'll be like, you have 6 cards in your hand? They're like, no, I have 5. And I'll be like, where'd the other card go? And then they're like, I mulliganed? Which is, I need to start making a tally at the top of my sheet when they mulligan. That's something a lot of players do, and I just don't. They just like, okay, they mulligan, and they make a check mark or something. And they make another nick when they mulligan again.
I love Magic Online for that reason. Like, I can let my guard down because Magic Online won't let them cheat.
You want to cheat? You can not do it on Magic Online.
You can proxy your IP address through Atlantic City.
Anyway.
Do you keep one-landers if you have a cantrip in your hand?
It depends on the rest of my hand, obviously.
Well, yeah.
It's like, yeah, I'm not going to just say, yes, I keep every one-lander with a cantrip, because it's subjective. Because, again, like you said before, I'm planning out my first 3 turns. So my first turn is cantrip, try to find second land. Do I have something good to do with my second land, or am I just going to be, like, cantripping again? Like, I don't know. It just depends on the context of my hand. But I would say that the vast majority of one-landers I will keep with a cantrip, because I think that cantrip decks in this format are just generally built towards having a lower land count in play.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, generally, yes.
I remember playing my Emerge deck, and I had a, island, and I had Ponder Preordain, and I'm like, keep easy.
Yeah.
And
because
turn
you have
one,
a bunch of cards in your deck that cost 0 mana or, 3 or 2 mana or whatever. Like,
yeah, I really needed to hit 2 so I could start playing like Counterspell and buy some turns that way. And like turn 1, I preordained, bottom, draw a card, not a land. Turn 2, draw a card, not a land. Ponder, look at 3, they're not lands. Shuffle, don't draw a land. And past the turn, my opponent's like, oh man, you shouldn't have kept. And I'm like,
no.
I looked at like 9 cards. Like,
I just got unlucky.
I think it's 8. Like, I'll take those odds. Like, I was in the 90% to draw something good and just be off to the races. And like, that was one of those times where I was like confident that like I made the right choice, even though I got completely destroyed.
Mm-hmm. It's frustrating.
I really think that almost any cantrip, because like I did the math and it's like even when you're on the play and you have preordain, it's like 85% to hit land turn 2, and ponder it's like 90% to hit land turn 2.
Yeah, and see that's why I kind of added the caveat of like, am I like, because I'm kind of just assuming that I'm hitting my second land with my cantrip. So my thought then doesn't go from, oh, can I hit? It's not. I'm never thinking about, oh, can I hit my second land drop with this one cantrip? Because I'm assuming I will. My thought immediately goes to, when I'm evaluating that hand, what am I doing once I hit my second land drop?
Yeah.
Like, what if it's a tap land? How bad is that for me? How important is my second turn? Do I have something to get me to my third land drop? Or is like, or is my hand just like so kind of mediocre that if I don't hit 3 lands, I'm just in trouble? Like, and so it's obviously subjective, but with the caveat of I do keep the overwhelming majority of 1 land cantrip hands. And that's because, like you said, you're almost just guaranteed. Like, you're 85% to hit it with a preordain, you're 90% to hit it with a ponder. You can just evaluate those hands and assume you're going to have 2 lands by your second turn, and then evaluate your hand from there.
Like, it's I feel like it's high enough percentage of a chance that my limited experience with Scred Delver, if I had Fairy Miscreant and like 1 land and a cantrip, I would lead on the Fairy Miscreant or the Delver. And then turn 2, I will play the Ponder or the Preordain instead of playing like double Ponder Preordain. Like, I just want to get out ahead. Like, what if I do draw a land naturally, and then I'm just like, wow, I'm miles ahead.
Yeah.
I think that's about it.
Yeah, we pretty much kind of covered everything we wanted to cover. Again, this is sort of a hard topic because we could probably talk for hours and hours about this on things that would probably be irrelevant to most of our listeners because it's so subjective. Like, play style, deck choice, all of these things I think boil into mulliganing decisions. And so hopefully you can just take what we talked about here, lay a foundation for yourself, and then build on it from there.
Yeah, there's always going to be weird decks like, the Tron, like, how many Tron lands do you need in a hand to make it playable? What weird things, like, just that's going to be your own deck. So
I think the best example of it is Vintage Dredge, where basically like every game of Vintage Dredge, like your game starts and your opponent get mulligans to 6, and then mulligans to 5, and then mulligans to 4, and then mulligans to 3, and they just do it so rapidly that like okay, they're playing Dredge because they get their hand, they go, do I have Bazaar? No, mulligan. No Bazaar. Mulligan. No Bazaar. Mulligan. Got the Bazaar. I win. A super, super extreme example of aggressive mulliganing.
I'm not familiar with that deck at all.
I don't even know if that's actually what they do. I've heard someone make a joke about it, but I've never played a game of Vintage in my life. So
I feel like that's the level of joke of like, oh yeah, you just mulligan over and over until you hit standard bearer. Like, no.
yeah, Dredge, you just mulligan the Bazaar Baghdad. I don't actually know. I tried to watch Eternal Weekend this weekend, and then I just was like, meh. Meh. I would watch Pauper Weekend.
Oh, by the way, before we wrap up, that new master set is gonna be so sweet for Pauper. I don't even care. I don't know what's in it yet, but I'm excited.
Well, you shouldn't be excited because it's a dumpster garbage fire because the internet said so, because everything Wizards does is a failure because they can't do anything right because they filled this set with all these incredible cards. And now it's just the worst thing they've ever done ever. And we're getting free $100 bills to come with all our boxes. Our boxes are $300 MSRP, but like they all come with $100 guaranteed premium foil cards that are going to lower the MSP to $200. And this is the worst thing that Wizards has ever done. How can they be so clueless about everything?
Yeah. Anybody that's upset at this is like, I wonder what they were saying for the last ones. Oh, the cards aren't good enough. And it's like, okay, well, now the cards feel bonkers. Like, oh, the cards are too good? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, like, I don't know.
I'm excited for the comments.
Someone's going to get unlucky and, like, open Lava Claw Reaches, which is going to be, like, a $20 box topper. But still, they put a free $20 bill in your box. And, like, you're going to crack this thing open and get all sorts of sweet cards anyway. Or like it's just going to put more singles onto the market if that's your deal. Just buy singles.
Yeah, like that's what Pauper players do. We buy singles. Like that's why it's all just upside for me.
I might even just try to buy a box of this. Like it's around Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly really only do Christmas for my son, and he's 5, so Christmas is really easy right now because I can get him like I can go spend like $30 at Walmart and just get him enough stuff to occupy him for an entire morning. Like, so I really don't have to spend a lot of money myself on Christmas, and I'm going to be getting a bunch of Christmas money. So I might just buy a box of this because it looks sweet.
But it costs too much to draft. Meh. I want to draft a master set for less. Meh.
Oh, no. Christ.
So,
if you got a problem with this, just play Pauper. That's start telling everyone on social media, this is too expensive. Come play Pauper.
The cards aren't powerful enough. Well, enjoy paying premium. I don't know.
I don't even. People say that, and anytime I hear that, I just don't want to. The cards aren't very powerful. It's just like playing worse limited because I can't open a mythic in my pack. And I'm like, cool. You go over there and do that. Think your stupid thought. And I'm going to go over here to my deck with 4 brainstorms and 4 gush in it.
And Cataxian Probe. Like I'm playing your band cards.
This is the only format in existence where you have unrestricted access to the most powerful cantrips, gush, like
all the best rituals.
Yeah, I mean, we can't really do anything with the rituals because banned, but still, yeah, we have access to them.
But next week, I think our topic is going to be. We had it written down as cards we want in Pauper, but I'm changing the name to cards we want in Masters, whatever. I don't even know the name of the set.
All the cards we want to see reprinted.
Yeah.
For Pauper.
There's actually a Reddit post, and like I was like, okay, like this is exactly the episode that I want to do. So I will write these down. Thank you.
Sweet, let's do it. That sounds fun. Fun times, happy days. Pauper is best format.
Okay. Let's get out of here.
Boom.
End times.
Thank you guys for listening to the Common Knowledge Podcast. That was our Mulligan episode. So
if you want to support us on Patreon, visit patreon.com/common knowledge. You can see the graph of our Power Rankings episodes. It's some really good data, actually, so take a look at that. If you become a patron, you can watch us do our Common Coliseum, which is Brandon versus me on Magic Online, and we're usually being goofballs or swearing at each other. And if you support us, you can support our 5-card blind tournament, which will be a free tournament to anyone who wants to enter, and the rules are on the Patreon.
Boom. The other way you can support us, if you don't want to go to patreon.com, you can just go to YouTube. This is probably the easiest and best way to support us. Go to youtube.com, type in Constructed Criticism into your search bar, subscribe to Constructed Criticism, and like and favorite and notification icons and all that stuff.
Ring that bell.
Oh, smash that bell icon. It's your boy. Yeah, there it is. Anyway, but seriously, that is one of the best ways you can support us, by supporting the network that we're affiliated to. Plus, there's all these awesome videos. We're all sad that Michael Hinderacher and Matthew Kling are leaving Constructed Criticism, because they're awesome and they're great guys. And one of the highlights of my week is talking to them on Tuesdays before Pauper night and just chatting. But we're also super freaking excited about Seth Manfield and John Stern coming to be hosts, permanent hosts. Yeah. You know who Seth Manfield is, right?
Yeah.
World champion, Hall of Fame. So, yeah, I mean, that's just incredible. Like, there are not very many places where you're going to be able to get just free access to some of the best minds in the game, and Constructed Criticism is going to be that place. So, check them out on the YouTubes. If you would like to email us, you can do so at commonknowledgemtg@gmail.com. And lastly, but certainly not leastly, not even lastly, because we have another part after this.
Second to lastly,
but certainly not second to leastly, we would love to give a thank you to our great sponsors, puremtgo.com, as well as inkgaming.com. Use coupon code CCMTG10 when you go to inkgaming.com. When you buy some of their merchandise, use that coupon code at checkout, get a 10% discount, and our network gets a kickback. So win, 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 win.